and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Yankton, and with me today from the St. Paul Pioneer Press, Jace Frederick. Jace, how you doing?
Hey, Ryan. Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We got Media Day Monday, so it all ramps up pretty quick, but got one last week of off season. How has your off season been going?
It's good. I do a bunch of other stuff kind of throughout the year, but definitely the summer is nice because it's more like regular person hours. No matter what you do, like it's like, oh, I'm home at night and like working during the 9 to 5 more so, and so it's kind of nice to get a taste of that. And I always do like the basketball season. People talk about like shifting the calendar to avoid football more. Just personally, like I kind of like having summer as the off season, just like for personal life, enjoy the outside and whatnot. So I always feel like it's a nice refresher of those 3 months of like, okay, by the end of like any playoff run, you're kind of wore down and like pretty ready to go then by the time we get back to here.
Yeah, I tend to agree, like, because you could theoretically start the season like around Christmas or something, or maybe Thanksgiving, and it's just like, that's fine, I guess. And if they were to, the season should be like 70 games, and then that would open up the opportunity to do that. But it's like, I also don't want, I think we're all hoping for a Wolves finals run. I don't want to be in July covering Timberwolves games.
Right.
So,
like, that's 1000% it. Like at that point you'd be like, oh, okay. Like, do you want to be like, oh, 4th of July celebration? No, Game 6 tonight. Like I don't think
I'll take the Game 6 part, but
yeah, sure. There you go. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't feel right to me. I don't know. I think if you play with the schedule too much, you lose a little bit of, A, you can't just duck football all the time. And B, I don't know, there just kind of is a natural sequence to things that I even think like players and whatnot would push back on that. Like people don't mind having their summer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about the Lynx after the Game 2 disaster, but like that's what I think the W did it right. They've had a lot of their main games in the playoffs on Sunday, and it's just like, I don't think, and it seems like they're more avoiding Monday and Thursday, so they are ducking the NFL to a certain extent. But it's also just like, I mean, it's not 100% Venn diagram.
Right.
There's some people that are gonna watch some, and there's gonna be people like myself who, yeah, I got the Lynx game on, I got the football game on in the background. Like, it'll be all right.
And totally, you've seen this now. Like the Lynx games, they aren't lined up with like the Vikings game. Because there are a lot of people who it's like, oh, it's football Sunday, but there are a lot of people who are like, I watch the Minnesota sports teams, like, and right. That, and I think that works out pretty well for them, to be honest. So yeah, I kind of like the way the WNBA has scheduled a lot of their playoff stuff.
Yeah, there's a brutal thing a couple years back. Iowa State men's and women's basketball played in the NCAA tournament.
Oh yeah,
in back-to-back rounds overlapping.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
And it was just like,
I've seen that with a few schools. I remember Creighton men's and women's basketball had that. Like it is like, there has to be a way to dodge that. Just literally just flipping the games within a session for one of the teams. Like, yeah, nevertheless.
But all right, we can hop into it. I guess before we get started, the Wolves this morning, we're recording on Wednesday morning, unveiled the new Classic Edition. The Black Trees, I think we all kind of had heard were coming, but they also unveil the new, or the old court, throwback court to go along with it. It's got like basically from the KG era, the early 2000s look to it. Do you have any thoughts on the throwbacks coming back?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what everybody's wanted for a long time. It would be interesting to go into a dive of why every organization got so formulaic with their logos and whatnot. They are like,
I think it's every business. Like, it's not just sports. Go look at every corporate logo is all plain now. And
yeah, you're right. I mean, they all look
apparently Cracker Barrel was like the tipping point of people not liking that anymore.
There you go.
Yeah, it's not just sports.
Yeah, but I mean, they all so circular and like, hey, they've got to fit this certain, like they've got to fit in this space or whatever. But you just look at so many of these old logos, like the Rockets, the 76ers, the Timberwolves, like those old ones were cooler. I think that's objectively true, and people have kind of been dying for that Timberwolf for a while. And then obviously the black jerseys with the green trees. It's not just like there's certainly some sense of like the Kevin Garnett and the nostalgia of that, but I really just think that those pop. And the Timberwolves didn't have any black like anywhere in their jerseys, and outside of like the ones with the green on it, like that green strip across. But black makes a lot of things pop. and,
Mhm.
and I just think like incorporating more black back into like their jerseys, court design, all of that would help anything. But especially, like those trees, like that's a really cool design. It always has been. The court looks
Mhm.
awesome. I think that was a great move to bring that all back and tie it all back in together. And I think, frankly, like I would guess that fans would like as many games with that as possible.
Yeah, it's gonna feel like 2 seasons ago where they had the. I think my favorite Wolves jersey all time was the '90s jerseys they were wearing. The 2 seasons ago
Yeah.
they
Yep.
switch. And if you remember Game 7, maybe Game 6-2 in Denver, they had planned to wear their standard blue ones, or probably their white ones, and they
Mhm.
were able to finagle it and switch it to the throwback jerseys. And I think this year's going to feel the same way if we get to a big playoff game and they're wearing whatever class or standard jersey. It's going to be like, but can we get the can we get the trees ones in there?
Right.
Or I think there's been rumors that the Prince ones are coming back too. Like, can we can we get more Prince? And it just kind of feels like, and I know they're probably working on it, but like a full rebrand is coming here at some point. I would imagine it. I don't. It's gonna take time. I think it a lot, but like eventually, I think it's time to try to change things up altogether. Maybe just go back to go back to the trees permanently. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with in any rebrand. I mean, I think a lot of people would like it to work itself backwards. And like you
Mhm.
said, like whether that's going back with the trees, and I think even just like the old logo, but like just less of making your logo look just like everybody else in the NBA's logo. I just think that would be better for everything. I don't truly understand because it's not like the NFL did that or anything. I don't understand it. If they could go back away from it, I think it'd be just a lot more popular. I mean, the Timberwolves stuff, we've seen it. Like the stuff that sells is like the Prince thing, and it will be this throwback jersey. Like, not a lot of jerseys always fly off for what they have. Frankly, a
Mhm.
lot of people don't like their current jerseys, and it's
Yeah.
not. Even if you're an Anthony Edwards fan living in Oklahoma or something, I don't know if you walk past the shelf and look at the Timberwolves current jersey and go, "Cool, I want one of those."
Right.
Where you might feel that way about these other variations.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I'm excited to. Well, maybe I'll have to take a stroll through the team store and see see what they got when they come out. But although they're always so expensive, it's crazy how expensive sports jerseys are now. But yeah, let's just jump into the Wolves. Do you have like what are your general expectations? I kind of want to set the baseline with people before I start, just because it's like feels like sometimes people you talk and talk and talk and it feels like you're on opposite ends and it's like, well, I think they're going to win
Yeah.
50 games. I think they're going to win 49 games. And it's just like you almost start like arguing about the perception first. And it's like, what is your expectations? I guess, and maybe with Fred VanVleet getting hurt and the Rockets being in an even worse point guard situation than the Wolves, uh, what are your general expectations for this season?
Yeah, I mean, if you think like before health, and obviously you do have to factor in the Rockets' health right now because that's the current status quo. But otherwise, if you just take everybody at their current full strength, I would think the Wolves can be like in that 50 to low 50 wins total, top 4 seed, and then probably to win a series and then be in a real fight in the second round and going from there. And obviously see how you match up and whatnot. But I think that should be kind of like the standard. And then it's like their goals, I think, for taking a step forward, which, yeah, when you've been to 2 straight West Finals, I think if you got to the West Finals again, I'd be like, that's a great season. A lot of people would be like, again, great. But
Mm-hmm.
I think just in general, if you were just being like fair about expectations, comparing their roster to others, to Denver, to Oklahoma City, I'd be like, get to the second round, you try to win one of those, you get to the West Finals, you kind of have to see what happens, you see how you match up, and you go from there. But I just, in general, that is where I just think of them, and being, I don't think they're West favorites, but I think they would be a team that can push one of, a Denver or an OKC, who I do view kind of as the top 2 teams after this last offseason that the Nuggets had.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I was kind of up in the air with Houston before the Fred VanVleet injury. Not in terms of they're obviously going to be pretty darn good, but like now that he's hurt, and apparently they can't, they're up against the first apron, and they can't go over it. I don't know what trade hard capped them at the first apron, but they can't like. Monte Morris signs with Indiana yesterday, and it's like they can't even do that. They
Mm-hmm.
like they're hard capped. I'm assuming it's the Durant trade. They're hard capped to the first apron, and so like they have like I checked like $1.5 million of space or something. So they have to wait until January, and then like because X percent of the season they can play X percent of a minimum to keep them under the. It's a whole thing, and they could trade. They have as good of a pick situation as almost anyone, but I just think I kind of put it in two baskets. Regular season standpoint, I think like there's almost no excuse at this point not to be like a top 3 seed from the regular season. I just think they're so built to rattle off regular season wins, and maybe even they might be in a regular season spot than Denver just because of depth. Like the Wolves are in a better depth spot, but like as a playoff team, like it's Denver and Oklahoma City. I think I was surprised to see like Vegas odds Cleveland as a better title favorite than Denver. Don't agree with that.
I mean, I gotta just assume that it's that better odds to get to the NBA Finals and then roll the dice from there
for sure. But I almost like as a title, like obviously the Cavs odds are as good. They might have the best. Like if just to make to win either conference, the Cavs might have the best odds to do that. But I think it's the. I don't know what is going to constitute a successful season, but like to me, it's like if they lose to Oklahoma City or Denver in the second round, that's not like you can have a successful season, but in that whatever theoretical series, like you got to show me, like if you lose, it's like we just didn't like we were on their level.
Right.
We could have beat them if we just like I don't know, good teams lose all the time. Like it's
a shot doesn't fall.
But if it's
here
or
or there, whatever.
If it's like last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, think about if somehow you end up and you're the 2 or 3 seed and Denver has a unlucky season, they're the 4 seed. And so the bracket breaks like it basically did last year and you're the West Finals again and you lose in 5. That's not going to feel like a successful season. Even making the West Finals is hard to call unsuccessful. But if you lose in 7. I think it would be
unsatisfying for people. I think it would be unsatisfying.
Is probably is a better word. I would almost argue if you make the West Finals, it's always a successful season. But
I'd agree.
Unsatisfying is certainly a better word. But like if you lose in 7 to Denver and it was just like, yeah, we just like, and Denver wins the title. I like that's almost a better season in the sense of it's just like, yeah, I see the path where it's like if you're getting blown up by, excuse me, if you're getting blown up by Oklahoma City again, it's like where's the path to beating that team?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. 100%. I think it's got to be something where it can't be like the Oklahoma City series finished last year, and it was like, okay, they seem pretty far away from actually winning a championship or contending for a championship. The one caveat I would put with all of that is people look at like, oh, Denver took Oklahoma City 7, and Indiana took Oklahoma City 7. Like the main difference in both those series was that Indiana stole a game 1 that they were frankly getting outplayed the whole game. Denver stole a game 1 and that frankly they were getting outplayed the whole game. And in that sense, Minnesota never had that game. And if you think about it, that's basically, otherwise it played out the same way of like Minnesota won game 3. Okay. Indiana won game 3 and Denver won game 3. And then all those teams lost tight game 4s at home. And then all of them lost game 5 and Minnesota just didn't have that one game stolen to where, game 6 Minnesota wins and then they lose in 7. It looks just like the other ones. So they didn't have like that steal. Now I think there's something to a team that is able to be outplayed and come back.
They put themselves the Wolves never put themselves in this situation to steal a game, right?
Right. I mean, yeah. And like, yes, because there wasn't even like a 10-point game in the fourth quarter of those situations. And that's the difference. So, but maybe it's not like as far off as you would think, because just in general in the home court, it looked like, Minnesota's on a level playing field in that spot. But I agree that it just like, it has to be more competitive. You have to be able to envision like, here is the path to where just moving forward, even just with Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, Naz Reid, here's how you can get it done. Because the Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert is kind of coming to a bit of an end. This we're getting towards like last runs, probably with them being core pieces of it all. But just like seeing strides of, okay, here's the Wolves core, and this is a championship core. It looks like a championship core. I just think more and more evidence of that helps you shape your future as a team as you move forward.
Yeah, well, that's a good jumping off point because I have a list of questions I'm going over with people, just big questions heading into the season. And the first one I wrote down for you, I know, big Mike Conley guy on the Conley corner, but what do we expect from Mike Conley this season? The hot take version of this question is Mike Conley washed? I just am going to flatly say no. I don't think that's the case at all. But like the better question is, what do we expect from Mike Conley heading into his 19th season?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably more continued of what you saw the second half of last year, which is like, okay, uh, like the wrist thing was figured out more so. He got actually back into shape. It's still not the same level of defensive player. That although like I mean I don't know, you watched him like block LeBron in the first round of the playoffs, and it's like okay, like there is like the acumen to be like there's still enough physical ability to defend when he's called upon, and I think that's kind of what it is. Like it's not taking on too many specific matchups, but like when put into a mismatch, you like him to hold his own there, and that just helps you on that end of the court, along with him just being smart. And then offensively, just continue to kind of like run the show, set people up, be aggressive enough to where he's a threat, hit shots, and then, play like 26 to 28 minutes and be there at the end and run two-man with Rudy Gobert. Like all things that help them and are a big part of like one ingredient for what can make the Wolves a good team, but maybe not somebody who's going to get leaned upon heavily. Not that he really has been at any point in his tenure here, but the role kind of reduces a little bit. But I think in general, like the quality with which he holds up that role will be about what we saw in the second half of the season, which was pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, he's 38, so you'd expect whatever for 5% less than the year before,
Sure.
and I think your point is good. 5% less than he was in the second half, and not 5%. I remember in the first half, it was a game. I don't remember what time of year, but in Chicago, I asked him a question in the locker room, and there's less people on the road than there is at home, and I just go, I asked him like, "Oh, you've had a rough shooting stretch to the season." I think he had a couple threes in the second half. I was like, "You hit a couple shots here tonight. Do you think it's turning around for you a little bit?" And he said, "Well, I don't." He jokingly said, I didn't think I was having a bad season." And then he answers the question after he's done. I'm like, "Oh, Mike, I'm sorry. I did." And he was joking, but I think that kind of does provide like I don't think he views it as like this is like like the people on Twitter are like, "Oh, Mike Conley's washed. We can't do this or that with it." I think there's still a lot of good minutes left, and they'll need to manage him better, I think. And they need to get a better look at Rob and need to find a better role for Donte. We'll talk about him later, but I just think Mike. The other question I kind of had is, do they still need his leadership on the court? And the basic answer is yes, but like, to what extent do they need a grown up out there with them, and how much do they need to rely on Mike for that?
Still feels like a lot at certain points. I think that there's like a brand of basketball they can play, a defense heavy one where they're forcing so much defensively, and they're bringing the right effort on that part of the court, where offense kind of comes easily because you're playing either in transition or secondary transition. But there are just so many times in the game still where they just kind of get stagnant. And obviously you'd like to have times where that happens less and less, but every NBA team does have those, and it's just who can get you out of it. And I don't think, and that's going to probably have to be a major step for Ant, but also even Julius, of like recognizing we're getting stagnant here, and I can't just keep digging us this hole. What do I need to get us into or whatever to get it going? I don't know if there's that recognition there always, to where it's like, okay, you kind of need a couple Mike Conley possessions here. But like you said, like that doesn't have to be some big role. Sometimes it can just be a timeout and be like, Mike's back in the game, and he wasn't. And stuff like that. It doesn't mean you have to play 35 minutes. I just think it's situational. I think they definitely need that grown up. But I think they can kind of pick and choose your spots as much as you want to, frankly.
Yeah, I'm curious just what, I mean, the next question I had under this topic was, should Mike start? And I kind of, in general, I kind of feel like it doesn't matter in the sense, it certainly doesn't matter for Mike. Mike will play in whatever role that I think you'll give him. But I think, like, should he start? It doesn't matter in terms of like winning the game. To me, it's like who is closing the game is almost more important. And I think Finch has shown that if it's not a Mike matchup, like they'll close with someone else if they have to. Although he very much does value Mike's presence out there late in games. But do you think? I guess two different questions. Should they be starting Mike Conley, and really will they to start the season?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, we saw them dabble with Donte for a while, and I think at some point they do need to also factor in like what gives you your best version of Dante. Uh,
Hmm.
is Dante a better player when he starts games? Because if that's the case, then maybe that is the route you should go. We always talk about this so much from like the Mike perspective, and just like team flow, but I do think Dante hitting a new level or the kind of a level that more mimicked what he did with the Knicks would help this team a lot, especially offensively, and just add a dimension that they frankly need against top tier defenses. Uh, and so that might be something that they have to talk to him about, or just look at the numbers, experiment. Just like, all right, is this helping Dante more? Because Mike is malleable. Mike would figure it out
Yeah.
one way or another. I do think there's some value in having like a steady hand like Mike to start games, but I really think he can be good in either role. And I just think it has to be okay. If Mike can be good in either role, and certainly Dante's not bad coming off the bench, but if Dante feels like he's in more of a rhythm or whatever the case may be coming in the starting lineup, uh, I think they thought like Dante could kind of get his shots more coming off the bench, but it just like the rhythm kind of seemed a little bit in and out, even amidst a pretty good season from Dante. But I think if he can take another level in the starting lineup, then that's something you could go to. If they think like Randall and Dante is the synergy can come easier in the starting lineup, like working in more of those combinations. I think you almost have to start thinking about other people more than Mike, because I think Mike will make it work either way, frankly. But I agree with you just in general. Like, you talked about how closing matters more, and I think Finch is kind of willing to do whatever it takes in certain spots. And I think sometimes that would be with Mike, sometimes that would be without Mike. But I think you have to look at guys who are going to be our tipping point guys this season of where you end up. And I think Dante is one of them. So I think it kind of depends on what best maximizes Dante, and that's how I would work backwards and answer the Mike question.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And it's just kind of like simply who is Dante's going to play more minutes than Mike, regardless of
Right.
who's starting. So it just feels like it's easier to build out a rotation when you're not like, because if Dante's going to play more, but Mike is playing the first X minutes, 6, 7, 8 minutes, it's like all of Mike's minutes are front loaded and all of Dante's minutes are back loaded. And it just feels like it's, I know, like you said, I know they're trying to, I think a lot of it was like trying to pair up Mike and Rudy as much as
Correct.
possible.
Right. And I get
And,
that. So that's
and that
a
was such,
variable.
right, and that was such a offensively. That was such a big part. The Mike Rudy pick and roll 2 seasons ago was one of their better actions, and that was more or less non-existent last year. And so I guess if you're planning to try to get the Mike and Rudy pick and roll back up and going, then maybe it does make sense to start Mike. Um, but if that's going to continue to not really be an action they try to focus on, then I'm not sure Mike and Rudy need to play as many minutes together. I guess another swing player that you mentioned similar to Dante would be Rudy, in my opinion. Like trying to get, I don't understand why he had basically one good playoff game, a phenomenal playoff game at that, and that was kind of it. And I mean, I get to the, I mean, we're always gonna have the offensive in the playoffs conversation with Rudy, but like I was a little bit frustrated, and maybe it was more the how the game was going than his play specifically. But like that Laker game, it just feels like in Game 5, why can't he have that like either every other game or just more often? Like I just felt like, especially against Oklahoma City, to beat Oklahoma City, I felt like they were going to need that Rudy, like 3-4 times a season or a series, and they didn't get it. It was basically just that Game 5. And I guess hopefully, do you think it should be a priority to kind of pair up Mike and Rudy again, or should they try to focus on maximizing Rudy in and of himself?
Yeah, I mean, I think they feel like Mike out there is what maximizes Rudy. And certainly like the way he moves and whatnot now, like it does fit in better with kind of a Rudy as your backstop defense. So I understand the pairing, but just in general with Rudy, I agree. Like the Laker game obviously was a special one, and you're not expecting maybe that, but
Sure.
more games of 80% of that, would just be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Rudy had a huge impact, and they were like, oh, do you remember those 2 offensive rebound putbacks that like kind of swung the game or stabilized things or whatever? And it just didn't exist. Sometimes I wonder with Rudy, like, okay, at the end of the regular season, so dominant, but is it like, okay, is it because he's playing with more physicality than everybody else, and then others ramp it up, and then just more is allowed, and so then like maybe his advantages are a little bit diminished? I don't know. It's something that you kind of continue to try to work through, because it just doesn't make sense that this guy was dominating. And I understand there were lesser opponents dominating the final 15 games of the season, and they're just a non-factor for much of the 6 weeks that
Mm-hmm.
followed in the postseason. I don't. I wouldn't be surprised if they will continue to lean into the Mike Rudy angle. And I do think that even still, like, you can pick and choose your spots where, like, hey, let's do 2 to 3 possessions of Mike and Rudy as like a stabilizing thing. But I almost feel like I'm in two boats with like the Ant Rudy thing. One is that you almost have to force it, especially in the regular season, of like, figure it out, run it. Ant Rudy pick and rolls, run it. Like, and work something here. Ant, he's in the dunker spot. Figure out how to use him. Like, these types of things. And maybe taking Mike out of the equation will force the growth of that. But then I'm also in the other thought of my mind is like, they've played together for a while. I just think this is what it is with Ant and Rudy. And so maybe you're trying to cover that up. So it's two things. Like, do you believe there's opportunity for growth there? Then I think maybe you have to take Mike as the safety net off of that, put him in other units and say, okay, Ant, figure it out. We've got a lot of regular season games. We don't have to win them all. Or if you think it just isn't a great pairing, so let's have Mike be the kind of version between those two. But then what do you do when Mike's gone? So that's a conundrum. And that's one they're going to have to figure out. I personally would be like, let's force it with Ant and Rudy for a while here. If it looks bad, it looks bad. But give it a little time.
I agree with the force it idea. Like, you got to figure out. It felt like, and so much of last season they didn't get to. And I mean, obviously part of this is on them, but like, it's more the circumstances. They didn't get to figure out a lot of like what they are. So much of last season was like, just try to keep yourselves afloat. I felt like if they would have like tried to experiment more, they certainly, if you lose one more game, you're in the play-in tournament. And who knows if maybe they still, if you flip them in Golden State, maybe they still make the West Finals anyway. Who knows? But they just didn't have, like, they just had to stay afloat. And the only time they really got to figure out what they had was when people got hurt. And even then it's just like, okay, we're figuring out, we're this X guy is playing well, but like, it's kind of like summer league. It's just like, how much of this translates to when the games get good? I think Jalen Clark is a good example of this. Jalen Clark, I think, is really, really valuable against great teams that has a person that you can guard him, that he can guard, and like, you can put him on. But like, if you're playing the Jazz, it's just like, it's not that to say he's unvaluable, but it's just like, who is he guarding? I mean, obviously Markkanen, but that's not his type he's defending. So it diminishes, and I just kind of felt like, I mean, this is a tangent, but like, he didn't like flash like Terrence did in summer league. And it's just like, yeah, because the things he's good at don't show up in summer league necessarily. No, Rob is kind of, you would like to see more than Rob, but we'll see how that goes in the regular season, I guess.
What was so interesting with the injuries too was like, they kind of happened in a bunch. So all of these guys were thrown in. So they're playing together, and it's like, all right, well, you guys aren't really going to play together. If one guy goes down and you see then like, oh, how does Terrence fit into the lineup with these other four regulars here? Or how does Jalen fit in with these other four regulars? And now it was like, here's Rob, TJ, and Jalen. And it's like, okay, we're seeing them, but we're not seeing how they fit into what happens if they just play more minutes within the regular rotation. So those answers, I don't know if we ever got too much of those answers. And we'll certainly see more of that now. But I agree, just in general with experimenting, like I totally agree, because okay, how much you have a lot of Rudy in the playoffs now. You saw last year's playoffs and it wasn't awesome. It wasn't awesome in just in the fact of even like, they didn't even stick with it. Like, he didn't play that much in a lot of these games. Right. So do you need to experiment even more? Do you need to see less of Rudy in the regular season if he's not going to be your postseason answer? And maybe see even like more, okay, Nas and Julius out there versus the elite teams, because we think in the playoffs that's who's going to play against the elite teams, or whatever the case may be, smaller lineups, whatever. Just so that you can develop some answers when the time actually comes. So it's not like you face the OKC and you're like, well, Rudy doesn't work. Well, these other lineups haven't really had these positions where they're put in and you have to figure it out. So they don't have a lot of solutions to questions they hadn't been asked before. There are so many different ways in which they can experiment, but the part of experimenting is you have to choose which ones you want to make. So that it's tough. There are a lot of things where you can go, I can see this and I can see this, but you have to pick an avenue just to start gaining the information on it to come to a conclusion.
Yeah, and I think going back to our initial discussion, they have enough cohesion and just quality talent that they should be able to experiment with things that aren't necessarily. I remember when it was against against the Clippers. And I kind of asked Finch why didn't Rob play? Or why were his minutes limited? And basically he said, well, we got up big, but then they kind of fought back, so we couldn't find the minutes there. And like that was kind of almost a red flag in my head. There's like, oh, okay, but so you don't believe he's helping you on the court right now? And that's fair. He's 19, he's a small point guard. That's great. But like clearly, at least last year, they viewed it as, if we play Rob, it will help us learn and help Rob learn and all that, but it's going to hurt us in the short term. And last year they couldn't take any of that. They already had so much at the timing of the Cat trade. I honestly, if the Cat trade happens 2 months before it did, I bet you the Wolves are the 2 seed. Maybe the 3 seed. The 2 seed required them to win.
The schedule was. I mean, yeah, it was
right.
Like, I mean, there were like 2 wins between them and the Lakers. Like, so yeah, I don't disagree with that.
It's hard to underestimate like how big the timing was. Just rough, and I would probably stand by that trade as a move they needed to make, but it hurt them last season. But this year, they should be able to take a little bit of more experimenting, even if it hurts you in X game. Like they should be able to win enough games, and even like their net rating last year indicated that they were better than the record showed. Now, the reason that happened was the clutch time stuff, which was pretty much their fault.
Yeah, that's been a problem for years now. I mean, really.
Was a part of it just quote unquote bad luck or variance? Sure, but like I think to call it it was it was self-inflicted. I would say more than bad variance, but I think they can take it and win enough games. They should be able to play Rob, Terrence, and Jalen Clark a good amount of minutes and still get home court top 3 seed in the West.
What I would say, just Britt Robson obviously has his annual sit down with Chris Finch preseason, and he came out with part 1 of that today, and like mentioned like 3 different times in there, Finch talking about the non-Rudy minutes defense has to be better. And for me, when I read that, I go, okay, is Rob included in that? Because even though I legitimately appreciate that he puts in the effort on that end of the court, like he's trying to play better defensively, it's not the same impact as if you have even just like a Donte, Jalen Clark, TJ. That's just better suited to defend and apply some ball pressure, which you probably need when you have a smaller front court like Julius and Nas. So I am curious to see if, and I don't even disagree with this, like if one of the main goals of this season is just to reestablish that dominant defensive identity that they had 2 years ago, and it wasn't bad defense last year, just wasn't the same. If they aim to get back to that, does Rob fit into that picture? How does he fit into that picture? Because if I understand having goals in the regular season, if we want to establish A, B, and C, and we'll experiment, but those are the ultimate goals of what we want to achieve. We're not even worried about winning and losing. We're worried about being who we want to be and getting the identity we want to have. Like we talked about, they didn't even really get one last year. Are at least their first attempts at that going to include Rob? I don't know. That's something we'll have to kind of see as the season gets rolling, because I just think if that's going to be one of your talking points, I immediately in my head go, okay, I don't know how he fits into that.
Yeah, and my worry there is, like, my biggest priority for this season personally is I want to be able to, and it's always going to be, Rob's 20, but like, what do they have in Rob Dillingham? They spent a good amount in him. Now, the picks, I don't care what the pick is. I just think, like, what has Utah gotten for Rudy so far? Not really a whole lot. They had a disaster. Not disaster. It felt like a disaster that first Rudy season, and they handed them the 16th pick. Like, yeah. I don't care what the pick is, even if, who knows what anything will be in 2031.
Frankly, it usually comes down to the organization that you're trading it to, of whether like they parlayed it into something good or not. Like Utah hasn't done anything right.
The pick's
for
already
a while now. Like,
I believe San Antonio already traded the pick. I think it went out in the Fox trade.
Okay, there you go.
So it's in Sacramento, I believe. But I don't care. Like that part of the cost doesn't bother me. It's okay if Rob isn't good enough, or whatever that means, and if that's the case, they're going to need to make some sort of big swing trade to be a true title contender. At least that's one of your bullets that's just gone right now. And if Rob ends up being a starting caliber point guard in this league, then it's a phenomenal home run trade because of the cost they give up. And they talked about that night how like the salary cap minutia, how like it's kind of a loophole that they were able to add what does Rob make, like 10 million or something by the end of his contract, to add that level of salary while they were basically in the second apron at the time. But I just like, to me, they got to figure out what they can have in Rob, and maybe they can do that in practice, and we're not seeing that. And that's probably the case to a certain extent. But like, and so if you're also trying to have the number one defense again, or like a top 3 defense again, if Rob's playing 20 minutes a night, it's hard to envision that, because like you said, the effort's there, and he'll get better almost certainly, because there are some sort of like just strategy things, or like, it's not effort, it's just like
tricks too,
didn't hit that rotation, tricks to being an undersized point guard. But sometimes it was just like, he's there, and the guy that's 6 inches taller than him just raises up and hits a half contested jump. Like that's a good contest in college, but in the NBA it is like that's not a good enough contest anymore.
Yeah, there are even like little, like, oh, okay, I realize here when I'm coming off this screen, like I can tug the jersey right here, and they'll never see that. And now my guy's slowing down, and I've eliminated some of the advantage, like things like that you probably just gain with time, and then learning guys and what they want to do. And I've seen this guy before. I know he likes to set this up or whatever. But yeah, it's just at some point there will be a size thing of like, this guy can rise up over me, and I'm right here, but it just doesn't matter. And that's not like a lot of possessions. It's just always like, okay, are we giving up 10% of our probability of getting a stop on this specific possession here if Rob's on the court? That can be the difference between being, the third best defense and the 6th or whatever. And if you're trying to establish an identity, like I always say 2 years ago, like I would have hated playing against that Timberwolves defense because it felt like there was no relief ever. Everything was so hard to get against them. Sometimes it was hard to just get the ball across half court. Then it was hard to get into your offense, let alone score.
Shout out Jamal Murray.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly. That was exactly it. And so like, and it's hard in a game where if you establish that, and then there is maybe a softer point that the team can attack for 8 to 10 minutes, and now maybe they feel like they've established a little bit of confidence and rhythm to get it back. But so I guess I will understand if at the beginning of this season they try to establish that. If it's there, it's like maybe you ride that out, because I really do think that there was like a path to getting to the NBA Finals 2 years ago, and it just didn't go their way. But if it's not there, if it's not quite as dominant, and you're still not kind of going into Rob of like, okay, maybe we veer a little bit away from that, or let's push Rob into a role and see how much it affects the defense or doesn't, then I almost feel like you have your answer and that they're not even going to it, right? Because I just think, like you said in practice, sometimes the answer is that you're not seeing it out there. I agree. But from the outside perspective, it is like, well, we are not even seeing it. And I know the coaches will say, well, we're seeing it in practice. But, it's like everything. It's hard to believe something that you don't see with your own eyes. So Rob is a major question mark of this whole thing, just not even this year, but the future. And that question needs to be answered soon, because Mike Conley's time's probably coming up soon. And there's not going to be a season where it's like, well, Donte DiVincenzo's the starting point guard and the backup is Anthony Edwards. Like that's not, I don't foresee that as a long-term solution for the Wolves.
Yeah. And they pretty much need Rob. I don't know what would constitute a successful trade, successful acquisition of Dillingham, but like he needs to be a rotation player on a finals team for it to work out. Right. And it's just right this second, it either it's hard to see that ever happening. Yeah, that's too strong, but it's hard to see that happening in the short term for him. But I will say the one place, if I flip it, the defense is obviously the thing with Rob. On the flip side, one of the questions I had was, how much will increasing pace be a focus? And certainly I think Rob and Terrence can hopefully be a big part of that. So they were 25th in pace last year and 23rd the year before. I just think like that's just too low for any, like there's so much low hanging fruit there to be able to pick up. They were 7th in the first Rudy year. I guess I don't really remember that, and I'm not sure why. I like that is a number that doesn't really make sense to me. And they really have the same. I mean, obviously Julius is in for Cat, but Slow-Mo's not playing and isn't here anymore. So like, there's no big big change I see. So it's just like, I don't know, like, why can't they be 15th in pace? Why can't they be 12th in pace? And I just think like there's so much low hanging fruit. But I guess the question is, do you think that should be a focus, is picking up the pace, getting out in transition more for the Wolves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have the guys who want to do that, and TJ is a huge one, and Rob is a huge one. But like whatever their minute load is, like them wanting to get out in pace isn't going to be like the solution for. Oh, here's how they jumped into 12th. They're not going to play enough for that. Likely, it's going to come down to. I think Jaden is somebody who should constantly be trying to live in transition for points.
Yeah.
But I understand if you're exerting yourself heavily on the defensive end, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm going to sprint. But it probably has to happen because, frankly, like if he wants to score 16 to 18 points a game, that's probably his path to do so. And then the biggest one is going to be Ant. It's not even just. It's not like getting a steal and getting out and dunking the ball. It's just like even the times when there appear to be obvious like 1-on-1s, 2-on-2s or whatever, there are times where he looks allergic to it, where he just slow dribbles out of it. And it's like, well, I think there was a transition play there. And he's like, let's reel it on back here and get back into this half court stagnancy that we've built up. I just think there has to be a little bit of a mind shift there. I think when you ascend as a player, sometimes you just, I don't know. I think maybe you lose some of the thought to do that because you're so good at everything you do and you have such confidence that like, oh, in the half court I can score easily here too. But I just think there's maybe too much of him passing up on that to where he should be one of the best transition players in the NBA because of just his physicality and speed and all of it. So I think if your best player isn't necessarily prone to getting out in the open floor, then it's going to maybe always kind of limit what the team wants to do. And I think Ant, as he's gotten better and better as a player, has gotten in transition less and less, which, I know they pleaded with him to do the opposite, but it's going to have to probably, if it's going to be like a meaningful shift in transition, I think he's going to have to be a bigger part of it.
Yeah, I agree that it's probably going to have to come from Ant. And I think it's important to point out, like, their current is like with Mike and Rudy as being, and to a lesser extent Julius being big parts of this team, like they're not going to be first in pace. I don't think that's a realistic landing spot, but it's just like you mentioned, Ant gets a rebound or Ant gets an outlet pass. Like instead of like just push it X more times per game, like just a little bit more, or get into the shot clock, get past half court with the shot clock at 19-20 instead of 16. Like just a little bit more attention to detail almost, or a little bit more effort's a poor word, but like just a little bit more focus on like keep it moving. Because it's just, I mean, the math of it is like for every second you get, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like every second you cross half court, every extra second you cross half court for like 2019-18, like your points per possession go down at every second. And it's not like, obviously, like if you're getting across at 23, it's like you just got you gained possession basically. Like that's a fast break, you're probably on a 2-on-1, but like it's just like the math of it is like you just have an extra second. If you have 2 seconds, you can make that one more skip pass that gets you an open look. Like just a little bit more pace, a little bit more attention to detail, and it is something that like I bet you they'll mention it on Monday at media day.
Right.
I bet what of the 30 coaches, how many will mention at their media days, like playing with more pace, playing with more, like probably 29 or something. Go look up who is first in pace. They won't mention it because like, like it's such a low hanging, we want to play with more pace. We want to play, but I do think for the Wolves, like, it's just like, it can't be 25th. There's no reason it should be 25th. You have plenty of young guys. You have plenty of minutes. I mean, Rudy doesn't play every single minute. There's like Nas, I think, is another one, like just run, like just go. But they also, like, I didn't look up the efficiency numbers in transition. In my mind, and by my eye test, they were bad. Like they were just like, I don't have numbers to back that up, but I'm fairly confident they weren't great. Part of that, Ant's talked about his mid-range game, and that's great. But like my when I kind of hear that, it was like, dude, you didn't finish a layup like all year. Like his numbers in the paint and by the rim were so bad, and it's counterintuitive, especially when he leads the league in threes and can dunk John Collins into oblivion, that like he's a bad finisher in the paint. But like last year he was, and I think that's another transition point. Like I guess because I don't have numbers on this either, but I'm almost certain that if a missed transition layup ends up being points on the other end at
Yeah.
such a high rate,
It's all missed layups, frankly. All missed shots around
that's true.
the rim are effectively turnovers, where you're heading the other way, like 5-on-4. I mean, that's just the way it works out. And
Yeah.
so yeah, you're not only
And it's,
missing your 2 points. I mean, go ahead.
yeah. I think when I hear that, sometimes I think, well, that's just like confirmation bias. Like you had a frustrating missed shot, so you notice when it immediately turns. No, it's backed up by math that like missed layups at I think the highest proportion of any shot type like get turned into buckets at the other end. And I would imagine if you filter even to transition layups being missed, it's probably even greater because you got half the team standing at half court chasing the play.
Yeah, I mean, and as much as like I'm with you, like when I hear the mid-range thing, I totally understand the late game, final 2 minutes. Like, look, like your best player has to find a way to
Mm-hmm.
get a bucket, and when you are threes and not even effective at the rim necessarily, and then like you don't necessarily have the mid-range thing, it's a lot easier to just scheme you out in a half-court set of like, we're not going to give him his thing that he most wants, and so now he's kind of scrambling. And there was so many times last year where it was like they didn't even get anything. Like we got Ant dribbling 5 steps to the right and jacking this terrible 3 that had almost no chance of going in as like the Timberwolves do or die shot. So getting to the mid range, like having more options of like, okay, they're doing this to me, I can get to this spot. This is a spot I'm more comfortable in now with 8 seconds left, whatever. I understand that, but I'm totally with you on just like the biggest thing that would cause him to ascend and make him even more unguardable, unschemable would just be being more effective and having just more touch and options around the rim to go to, so that it's not always just like, please call foul because it's him scoring here. And like we talk about pace, I just think that that's a real solution against the teams that you need it to be one against. Like it's one thing to be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh yeah, get out and run against Utah or whatever, not to keep using them, but it's something that you need against like these teams that can really clog you down in the half court. Houston, Oklahoma City. I mean, even Golden State for big chunks. Like it was when Golden State was giving the ball away that Minnesota then was going on these 10-12-0 runs, playing in transition or semi-transition. These teams that are really good defensively in the half court, like you're probably not just going to be elite half court offense all the time. But if you can get up and down, then you're going to generate things like Indiana did. Like they had success against Oklahoma City because a lot of times Oklahoma City wasn't sinking into its half court defense because the Pacers go, 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 go. And that's
Yeah.
where it's like, yes, you can't go into a series against Oklahoma City and be like, okay, now we got to pick up the pace. So many of these things are like, did you establish that in the regular season? Like, because if you
Yeah.
didn't, it's not going to be sustainable for 6 or 7 games here. Just being like, let's try that. Let's just start running. We never do it, but let's do it now because it's going to work here. It's got to be something where it's more noticeable. It's at least more a part of their DNA when they get to the point of the season where they actually need it.
Yeah. And to the Indiana point, I think a lot of teams now are going to be like, how can we do what Indiana does? And like my short answer, I kind of think is like, you can't. Like, like you can replicate some of the things they do, and certainly like pace. It's just like, do you have Tyrese Halliburton, Rick Carlisle? Oh, you don't? Then like that, like they were just good. Like, how can we replicate what prime LeBron James does? It's like, I don't know, be one of the best. I don't know, be Michael Jordan. Like that's it. Like, so at a certain point, it's just like, but like if you are going to try to do what they did, like you said, like it's got to be something you did most or all of the regular season, or else you're just gonna be the crappy Pacers. You're gonna be the poor man's Pacers. So
it's like the Tyrese thing, and that's one thing with Ant where it's like, I'm not always just talking about in transition where he gets a kick out pass and then it's like, okay, now you charge at the rim. So much of what Tyrese does is just another kick ahead pass, and it's trusting somebody else like a Pascal Siakam or somebody to go one-on-one or even one-on-two with just like a slight advantage in terms of positioning. So it's like getting the ball and it's instantly thinking, okay, like you said, like Tyrese is special. Like he's one of the better players in the NBA. Like he's better at this than other people, so it's not going to look the same. But it's just having more of a mindset of, okay, I got to kick out pass. Oh, okay, look, now I see Jaden out there like 10 feet in front of me, whatever the case may be. Obviously more than 10. But to just give people an opportunity to see if they can get an advantage themselves and trusting them of like, if they have nothing, they might pull it back. But also we're okay if there's only a 52% chance that they score here of taking the shot of, pushing in, maybe drawing a foul, whatever the case may be, knowing that in the long run, it's going to be helpful to establish some of that as a team.
Yep. All right, last topic, and we can go through this quick because we already talked about it a little bit. what are we looking? Can the Wolves get the New York Knicks version of Donte DiVincenzo this year? Is that something they can get? I just kind of wrote down. So his 3-point attempts went from 8.7 to 7.1. I think that kind of makes sense. The Knicks were relying on Donte more than the Wolves were, but his 3-point percentage honestly didn't dip that much.
Right.
Like he was just north of 40% in New York and just south of it in Minnesota. Like that's well within a margin of error just in terms of like variance. But like the big thing was his 2-point percentage was way down from 54 to 49%. And then the other big thing, which matches the eye test, the turnovers were up, and it's only 1.4 to 1.6, but given that's a big jump given he didn't have the ball nearly as much as he did in New York. So if you did it like by a per possession basis, I'm sure it's a fairly big jump. And that was like the big thing for me is like he shot fine. It was pretty bad at the beginning of the year and then started to get hot probably after his injury, I believe. But like it just felt like every time he would drive the paint, it was a turnover. And certainly like similar to Ant was not finishing layups great. Is there a way that they can kind of get closer to that, to the effectiveness he had in New York?
Yeah, and I think that's where everybody's going to point oftentimes and go, okay, Ant can't finish around the rim. And Donte, I mean, it really was like so much of what are you doing here? When he would drive in, it would just be like, oh, well, he just threw it to nobody. So many people point to that as like, oh, well, Rudy's clogging things up, so everything's more complicated down there. And I just don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think so often, so much of the spacing can be like guys not relocating even around the perimeter, or to provide the proper window for kick-out passes, things like that. And I just don't know if Donte ever really got totally comfortable anyway. I think he was always kind of trying to find things of like, what should I do here? I guess I should attack here. Or like when he's taking his shots, like it felt kind of forced. And I think it's because he said this, I think maybe even the day after the season ended. I'd have to go back and read it. But like not knowing always for sure where the shots were going to come from. And not having a few things that he knew, like we're going to do A and B in this game, and I know I'm getting my shots from that, and then I might get a few others elsewhere. Like I think they have to find things where they go, okay, almost every game, maybe every game, we're going to do this 5 times a game, and it's going to lead to a Donte shot. And then he knows that those shots are coming, and he gets them in that rhythm, and then other ones just start to find themselves in transition, whatever. And he's found a groove, and maybe he just hits a couple ones where you're like, oh, that was a tough one. I think that has to be, I think he's such a big part of what would help their offense, I don't know, space out to the point where like even in the playoffs, like his mere presence or going on a run where he can kind of carry you at a time where things are tougher. He can be part of the transition problem, I think, too, when he's playing well. I think it has to be a major focal point of like, how are you going to get Donte more consistent offense, more comfortable offense to where you're getting the best version of him? I don't know if he can reach that Knicks level. That was pretty high level stuff when he did the second half of that year and in the playoffs. But I think you have to try because I do think he represents another kind of big part of the ceiling of this team.
Yeah, I agree. I actually did. I wrote down this exact thing from his exit interview that you pointed out there. I don't know. You went to Oklahoma City for the Game 5, right?
Yeah, I don't even know if he talked after that. Maybe he did.
Yeah, it was at his exit interview, and I asked you that because half of you guys kind of came in midway through exit interviews because you flew in from Oklahoma City the night before. But he mentioned, like you said, just like in New York, he just knew where his shots coming from, knew the actions they were running, and similar, both him and Julius, like they just never got time to set that up. And so I think like a lot of the turnover issues, a lot of the 2-point percentage, field goal percentage shot stuff, I don't think the volume's going to go back to New York stuff and probably shouldn't. But like if you can get him, but like if his volume is down from what it was in New York, you would hope that like the 3-point percentage would go up just by like, with the volume you're getting rid of is like the lesser percentage shots, hopefully. And so can you get him closer to, now he's never done this in his career, but like closer to like 42% from 3, if they're just truly catch and shoot wide open, or like more of those like Malik Beasley type shots where like you're truly moving, or maybe a better like Caleb McBride type shots where you're coming off screens and down pins and all that fun stuff. They didn't really do that a lot for him last season, and I think that'll be the biggest way, just like in training camp, getting those spots, getting those like run Donte plays more often, because I think just as a pure like offensive weapon, he's probably one of the best guys you got other than like the the main ball handlers and Julius.
Yeah, and not only like like you said, they didn't have the trade could have happened months earlier, right? Obviously. And then also just like it's a first full year with the team, and like yes, he shined in that 1 year in New York, but there is something too. Like you played with a lot of former college teammates who knew your game, knew you. There's comfort there, and he didn't obviously have that here. And if you remember, like he started playing his best stretch of basketball, and then he suffered his injury that took him out for like a month, and so there was a little bit of a reset coming back from that. Like he played a couple really phenomenal games. I remember the Memphis one was the last one, but then there was another game before that where it was like, okay, we're seeing Donte like flirting with triple doubles, 25 points, like 7 and 8 or whatever, and it's like, okay, this is like Donte DiVincenzo. And then he got hurt, and then I just don't know if he ever really got back into like any type of rhythm after that. In the playoffs, the shooting performance there, I think, is what kind of sticks with everybody. I think the playoffs make the regular season seem worse than it was. Because I've had that point this offseason too, where I've looked at the numbers and been like, actually, these were pretty good. But you just have this lasting impact of like, oh, another missed three, another missed three, another missed three. Is he helping out there right now? Maybe not. All of that, but I think it's just going to be finding a more consistent thing where it's like we know we can rely on Donte for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So here's his shooting splits pre and post All-Star break, which I think is going to line up pretty good with what you talked about, his injury. So before the All-Star break, he was just shy of 37% from three. And just after the break, he was 44.7% from three.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think those are your two extremes. That either extreme, I don't think he will approach. But like, if you can get closer to that 42% and he's bombing away still at 6-7 attempts a game, like, and like that's just going to be so much more helpful, especially from like we'll see. I kind of tend to believe that the postseason struggles were just like bad variance or maybe self-inflicted in some way. But like, I'm pretty, of all the players that like, if you were confident projecting, if this was like fantasy basketball, if you're confident in projecting whatever stats they have, Donte, I'm fairly confident. I feel like I know what his season is going to look like.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is interesting, the playoffs and whatnot, just seeing guys, the 3-point reliance, and maybe how much can you rely on those things in tough playoff spots. That's just one thing that I've thought a little bit more about. It's not even something to really even consider until the playoffs. But like, like there are some times where Nas looked not helpful, and Donte looked not helpful. And it's just like, okay, what are the things that you can consistently rely on? Is like a heavy reliance on specifically like a certain guy's 3-point shooting, especially a role player's one. I don't know. Does that maybe have higher peaks and lower valleys when the pressure and the lights crank up? I don't know. But it's something where they just have to continue to, I think, search for all this throughout the whole season of like, what can we consistently do offensively that we know will translate against elite level defenses in May and June. And maybe that can be as simple as just playing with more pace and just knowing that you'll find more cracks because of that. But I don't know. There are like a million things that you start to think of as the season gets going here. And that's just another one as I think back to like the way Nas and Donte finished the season.
Yeah. And I maybe why I'm like, I don't think it's like some guys, James Harden's a good example. It's just like, it's not even his play style. It's like whatever mentally is going on with big games in the playoffs with him. With Donte, how good he was in that New York playoff series.
Totally.
I don't think it's a mental thing. It's some combination of matchups, small sample size, all that stuff that, I like your thought. I don't disagree with you at all, but like, it just in terms of like, even with Rudy, like you might point to some sort of mental or really like structural thing that placed out. Donte, I'm not as worried about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely buying Donte stock heading into the season. That's maybe where I'm with you. I think you can kind of forecast who he is going to be and what he's going to deliver for this team. And the higher, I guess, if there's a range, and if he can end up on the higher end, then that's where this team can even be a little bit better than I would anticipate.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, that's where we're going to wrap it up for this one. Anything to plug, Jace?
Nothing right now, frankly. We're heading into media day, and we'll start turning on content then. But yeah, I'm just soaking up this last week of knowing that what's to come after, and it's exciting. But we're about to get into the rhythm of it all, and looking forward to it.
Yeah. Any Vikings links, Viking or Gopher takes you got in the chamber?
Any Gophers takes? No links. Man, I don't know. This Lynx.
I don't want to talk. I don't want to
That
talk
was
about
tough,
that game
man. That
too.
was tough. That was just not. I would say, like, as surprising as it was for them to have that finish to that game, where they just kind of, frankly, did look really discombobulated. Even Fee, frankly, like just not getting into like her stuff. She had that one nice move inside, to where she scored a bucket that maybe put them up like 4 or 6 or something. But other than that, like just kind of a little bit rushed the whole time. I do have confidence in them as just what they've been through as a team, that won't be an outcome that phases the rest of their series, but they're definitely in for a fight the rest of the way now.
Yeah, it's like, and it's like one of those games where it's just like, if you lose in overtime with the, like, they didn't shoot well, the other team shot well, in a vacuum, you'd go, yeah, tough loss, but like you get over it. But it's just like, it's a 3-game series.
Yeah.
Like I can talk about the like 1-game shot variance, but it's just like, okay, but they've one more shot variance game, and now we're playing for like that. It's not that I like have any like, I'm fairly confident they're going to win the series, but it's just like you're getting your margin of error. you the biggest chunk of it is now gone.
Yeah,
but,
it's 3-game series. You don't have home court for it. You know, like that's the actual reality of the situation. And Phoenix found something with physicality, frankly, and that's something that you have to answer the bell on. And because I'm sure they're going to ramp it up again and again in that sense, seeing that that's what worked, and that's just what Alyssa Thomas brings to the table. And so they have to be ready for it. They have to have counters for it. And game 3 is obviously just a massive swing game because you do not want to have an elimination game in Phoenix.
2 of them, yeah. Are you a follow-up 3 guy? I think in terms of like fan value, yeah. I'm very anti.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's a rule.
You're a rules guy, like, but strategy, you believe in it.
Strategy,
but you would hope that the rules
it.
Rule it out. Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. Like, if you want to come up with a rule to take it out, but just game theory, you got to do it. I understand, like, it was the rebounding thing. You're like, hey, we weren't going to do it because there's too much time. But as these offensive rebounds are happening here, like, we didn't instruct them to do it, but now we would want them to do it. But the play is happening. I understand what happened there, but I think that's where you would hope at some point. I know a lot's going on, but it kicks in for somebody, I should foul here.
Yeah. And I think doing it at 20 seconds, which I think is when that possession starts, I think would be early.
Agreed.
And they did have a foul to give, so I probably would have given that foul.
Yeah.
Well, even at 20 seconds, that's early, but like,
and it's right in front of the Lynx bench, right? So like if at some point, even the bench can just start yelling, foul, 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 right there. Somebody's going to pick that up.
The minute the offensive rebound comes, and that is one piece of bad luck. If that original shot hits the rim, the Lynx win that game. Because the ball bounces up and they get their rebound. The fact that it's an air ball, it makes the offensive rebound. But like the minute the offensive rebound happens, it's easy to say this in retrospect, the foul has to come right there. Because the chance of an open 3, and then it's one possession, but like Alana Smith was late on the closeout, and then is scrambling. If like the minute the offensive rebound comes, okay, like you're giving up layups, like don't let them tie the game, because like if they hit a layup with 10 seconds left, you're just in such a. But
it's like
easy
you fouled. It's basically like you fouled at that point,
right? It's easy to say that now after we see the 3-point goes in, because like 50% of the time that shot rims out, and who cares anymore? But
yeah, it's totally one of those things where you understand as an athlete in the moment, like it's a scramble. You're just thinking about getting the rebound, and then you're thinking about, I got to stop them because they might shoot it here. Like you're not thinking, should I foul? Should I not foul?
Right. And Cheryl said after the game she did not instruct them to foul. So at that point, there's like you're not going to just like go rogue, but like
because otherwise you see other times where somebody fouls and it's like, oh man, I totally I got the situation wrong or whatever.
Shout out JR on that one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, that was going to be interesting the rest of the way there. That'll yeah.
Well, yeah. Big game 3 on Friday. Leo and I will have coverage of that as well as Media Day on this pod, and go check out Jace's writing on Media Day. Should be an interesting one, less weird than last year where they had the trade, I don't know, a couple days before. But for Jace, I'm Ryan. Thank you everyone for listening. Go Wolves.